afternoon. My name is Stephanie Short. I'm Vice President of Partnerships at America Succeeds. Welcome to Skills for Tomorrow's Careers. So the need for students to develop durable skills alongside academic skills and technical skills was apparent long before the pandemic. However, COVID-19 greatly accelerated some of the existing trends, reshaping the future of work. And so specifically, we're seeing a shift towards skills and competencies over traditional credentials like degrees. So how do we prepare students for success in this new paradigm? And that is what our panel is going to be talking about today. I'm really excited to be joined on stage by Dylan Gambarella, CEO of NextGen HQ, Susan Rivers, Executive Director of iThrive Games, Courtney Riley, co-founder of Skillsline, Zarek Drozda, founder of Data Science for Everyone, and Linda Kai, Vice President of Talent Development at LinkedIn. And we're going to jump right in because 5 people have a lot of great things to share with you in 40 minutes. So Linda, we will start with you. How are you at LinkedIn and employers more broadly thinking about skills and skill development?
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. So what we have seen on LinkedIn definitely endorse this long-term shift towards more skill-based thinking. I was sharing actually at another panel that now 45% of the recruiters are actively using skills data to fill their roles. On the flip side, our workers, including students and future workers, know the value of skills. So just in the last 12 months, about 300 million skills were entered by LinkedIn members on the platform. So people know they need to stand out by the skills they have, not only the titles they had before or the companies they have been, or the degrees they have earned. So I'm just waiting for the moment that you go to LinkedIn and you see a lot of like ex-McKinsey, ex-Google. I'm just hoping one day we could not using that as the only criteria, but really focus on what do you bring to the table, what you could do. For LinkedIn internally, we know that from a performance standpoint and from engagement standpoint, soft skills play a big role. I know it's durable skills, and I see there's a big overlap with what you are identifying and what we still call soft skills. We have a very popular apprenticeship program called Business Leadership Development, and it's essentially providing 3 rotational experiences to graduates before they get into a full-time role. And they are from similar schools, similar age, similar experience, but what we found was because of the mentoring, coaching, and the soft skill focus during the 12 months, there's a significant increase in their performance, in their intention to stay, as well as engagement after they graduate and got to the role compared to someone who have never been to similar programs. So it, definitely see the difference both on the trend in terms of data and both from my experience and my team, what my team is doing.
That's really helpful. Now, so for those of you who don't know, durable skills, another name for 21st century skills or soft skills, are things like critical thinking, collaboration, communication. America Succeeds has done a ton of research. We would be happy to share it with you about how these skills are in demand across the workforce. They're demanded in every job, in every industry. But durable skills alone aren't enough to set a student up for success. Technical skills are also really important. So Zarek, I would love to turn to you. How have demands for technical skills kind of changed more recently, and what should we be thinking about relative to technical skills in the coming years?
Yeah, so our team at the University of Chicago was really interested in tackling that exact question. And we ran a survey on the Freakonomics podcast series to try to understand how technical skills, and specifically the mathematics and STEM skills that students might need to graduate into the workforce today. And Stephanie and I were planning a little bit of audience participation here. So we wanted to try to replicate or resample the survey with you all. So if you'll indulge me for a second, raise your hand if in the past month in your workplace you have used geometric proofs. Think back to grade school, high school, geometry proofs. Anyone? I saw one hand, one brave soul in the back here. Thank you. Well, let's assume for the math that this is about a 100-person room, so we got 1% right on the first question. Let's go again. And to be a bit more generous, we'll go for a full year. So in the past year, have you hand-derived an integral or a derivative in your workplace? I got another hand. Oh my gosh, amazing. Okay, thank you. Now, think about the past month. One last one here. Have you used a spreadsheet, looked at a data chart, a data visual? Okay, there we go. Oh my gosh. I think I literally heard that in terms of the number of hands that went up in the room, right? And that is exactly what we found in our initial survey. And I think the message here, and this is a really critical point, is not that the old content is useless, right? We still need mathematics, we still need calculus and geometry and all of these disciplines. What's critical as we go forward is the dosage and the ratios and time allocation that we think about how we design our K-12 curriculum and updating it from what was the norm 50, 100 years ago.
Thank you for that, Zarek. The good news for those of you in the room who are thinking, oh my goodness, I don't have data science in my programs, right, is that there are lots of opportunities, there are lots of skills and lots of ways for students to develop their skills and strengths and aptitudes. And I would shout out, because there's a strong contingent in the room, our friends from CAPS Network, if you all want to raise your hands. Thank you for representing. You do a great job with this. But some of our leaders up on stage also have really interesting approaches to helping students develop both their technical and durable skills. And so Dylan, I'd love to come to you first. What's your approach with engaging Gen Z in developing their durable skills?
It sounds like we need to get more proofs going in the audience. Our approach is really simple. We have this crazy idea that in order to effectualize learning, you have to focus on screen time. Getting people to show up is the first, I'd say, barrier to actualizing any type of learning. So when we were designing our solution, we looked at where are young learners, today's learners, actually spending their time. Forget about learning, just where are they spending their time? No surprise to anybody in the room, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram. That's where Gen Z is currently living. And so what if we took those deliveries, those strategies, the gamification elements, and applied them to learning? Well, our bet is that we'd get more shots on goal. And if you're a hockey fan, Wayne Gretzky, I think even the Michael Scott Office quote, you're going to miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And we've designed our platform to really optimize for engagement first. Our bet is that if we can get more time, build a learning habit, that will lead to young people actually building these real skills and eventually result in the outcomes that we're all chasing. But it starts and ends with, is somebody opening the app? Are they coming to the class? Are they actually engaging? There are only two ways to do that. You make it fun and make it desirable, or you tell somebody they have to. And currently our setup, let's say from an institutional perspective, doesn't have these skills, these soft skills, these human skills as part of the classroom, as Zarek's study will tell us. So we have to make it fun. We have to make it desirable, and that's what we're aiming to do.
I love that. And Susan, I would love to bring you into the conversation today, because I think the element of fun is sort of at the heart of learning through experience and learning through gameplay. So will you talk to us a little bit about how students are developing critical in-demand skills in their out-of-school time in these alternative learning environments?
Sure, absolutely. I think you're exactly right with the fun and the play. When we're kids, we just fully embrace that we need to play to learn, but then we look down on that really. Once kids hit middle school, once they hit high school, you're wasting your time. Why are you doing that? Do something relevant, do something important. And there's no better place or opportunity to really build what I call essential skills and these durable skills than through play. And so I've seen in my kids and teenagers out in the world, they're practicing so many of the skills that we're calling durable skills while they're playing games, especially when they're playing games with others. And so we've leveraged that at iThrive to create opportunity for young people to practice through play their social and emotional skills in kinds of settings that are stressful, where there's crisis, where they need to work together. So they're practicing when it feels like it matters. It's still fun, but it feels like it matters. Critical thinking, stress management, negotiation, compromise. If we don't create settings where it's safe to play and practice these skills, we'll just have an intellectual understanding of them and not the embodied, really learning and building the habits for life. And so play is just a beautiful place to do that. And it makes learning really fun, which creates the openness to learning and then the deepening of the learning.
I love that. And because this is more of a K-12 educator-focused panel, right? I know many of you are familiar with sort of a scaffolded approach, right? First, we need to see the skills, then we need safe spaces to practice the skills. Ultimately, we'll need opportunities to articulate those skills to move on to our next learning journey. There's a really important point embedded in this, though, that oftentimes students are developing in-demand skills, both technical and durable, but we have forgotten to tell them that that's what they're doing within that experience. Right? Just simply the act of some common language that educators and learners and employers can all align around to connect people to opportunities, both in college and in their future career. And so, Courtney, I would love for you to share a little bit more about that. How do you think about the language problem from the lens of Skillsline?
Yeah, that is exactly right. So many young people do develop durable skills, at least a subset of them, and have no idea. And so come to a job interview for the very first time and say, well, I really don't have any skills or experience. And everybody does, and it's a matter of translating. So at Skillsline, we're focused on teaching the fundamentals of these durable human skills and making sure that young people know what they are, have language to talk about them, know how to identify them in themselves and in others, and have learned some strategies, some practical things that they can do to practice, to build, and to develop these skills over time and get better at them over time. And so we do that. We try to make it really easy for educators to bring these skills into their learning spaces because often they're hesitant to do that in a real way. And so we have an online suite of micro lessons that are very easy to use. We have facilitation materials to support having rich discussions in the classroom and contextualize those skills around all the other learning activities. So we try to make that a really simple thing to bring into formal learning. But I'll add just real quick that we also have lots of opportunities, just as I think everyone was saying, to make sure that students learn what these skills are and to learn the language of them in informal learning opportunities as well. And so I just want to shout out ASA, who supported us with this panel, but also just launched a platform called Evolve Me for students that does use those incentivizations, gets them where they are in the online spaces, brings some of the gamified aspects to it, but also has a wealth of content partners that bring really great skills-based learning, and we're thrilled to be one of those partners. So there's just so many more opportunities today and resources out there for young people to get that understanding of the skills so that they have the ability to articulate them later on to employers.
I love that. Linda, I'd love to come back to you here and talk about this from the employer perspective. As you mentioned, 300 million skills were added to LinkedIn. And so there's a lot of skills out there. There's a lot of language. And honestly, sometimes I think we're using the same words to describe totally different skills. We're using different words to describe the same skill. Sometimes we're speaking totally different languages, right? And I think that's an opportunity for everyone in this room. Linda, as an employer, how are you thinking about that in kind of making the connection between the skills that you need to succeed in your jobs and the skills that talent is coming to you with?
I have been thinking about this every day, literally like my team. And this is not an easy nut to crack because, just before the summit, I was on the Workforce Insight board with over 20 chief learning officers and talent officers, and we were exchanging notes on how we think about skill portfolio, how we think about, the ways to understand what skills are available versus what skills are needed in the future, and how do we bring those insights to senior stakeholders in the use case of role migration, workforce planning. So it's a huge area. That's at like 30,000 feet level. But I think more tangible and connected to the conversations we are having here, we have been very much putting emphasis on manager development, right? How many of you play Roblox with your kids? Or the other way around, how many of you brought your parents to play Roblox with you? I'm one of those parents. But I do have to believe that, because manager has such an outsized impact on what talent or employees think in terms of importance of skills, what to focus on, how to learn, it's important they are also on the same page, like what skills are important. We do a lot of manager training to make sure they set expectation since day one when their employees are onboarded. They continue to go back and review the skills through performance conversation, career planning conversation. So it's reinforced every time they have one-on-ones with the employees. And we also make sure that they support alternative routes for especially Gen Z or younger generations, or just any new employees to develop their skills. Things like employee resource group, right? Or social impact program. In a lot of companies I talk to, managers are reluctant. They feel this is extracurricular, but actually to what everyone is saying here, you develop very meaningful skills through those activities. So making sure that managers know, onboard, and support those skill building activities are very important. So this is the angle we take. And then the last thing I would say is just making sure that employees have the agency to decide, based on their self-assessment, what I'm good at and what I need to develop, they have the agency to develop their skills. And then that's all based on, do they understand why this is important? Do they understand what's in it for me, right? Like for some younger employees that don't have good mentoring or coaching opportunities, especially in the represented group, maybe first generation a professional worker in corporate environment, they don't come in immediately understand, I need to focus on critical thinking or communication or networking, because that's going to really help me, opening doors. So, I said a lot here. Hope that's helpful.
No, it's super helpful because there's a couple threads in there I want to pull on that I think are great examples of what this looks like in the workplace that are equally as relevant in the education space, right? In Linda's example, she's talking about managers, but I think in the K-12 space, we need to think of the manager as the educator, right? That part of the system we have developed is we are asking learners to be lifelong learners, to be really agile and resilient. We're trying to build systems and companies that are agile and resilient, but oftentimes we forget and don't talk about the support and opportunity to help educators step back into that role as a learner themselves and practice being agile and resilient and embracing new practices and embracing new ideas. Linda, also, you touched on the idea of agency, right? The importance of helping students develop agency to navigate in this world, to really let students lead in their experiences, because we know that when they're leading into something that's authentic and interesting to them, they have the best opportunities to develop these skills. So Dylan and Susan, I would love to turn back to you. Can you unpack a little bit with some helpful tools and tricks about what are some takeaways that some of the educators in this room might bring to their work in engaging Gen Z in some of this skill development and learning?
Yeah, happy to start. So I'm very much about encouraging practices that really center the learner and creating opportunities for them to have agency in directing and leading their learner, and for educators to really observe and participate and sort of change that power dynamic in the classroom, which I know sounds really scary. It sounds scary as a parent of kids too. But that shift in power where you're co-creating with your young people and seeing how they think and seeing how they interact. Games allow a really great way to do that because young people are already game-minded, and so they don't need an adult in the space to tell them what to do or how to do it. And so as an educator, you can be a participant observer of the interactions if you set up the game space or a co-design, co-creating game space for your young people, and see where are they tapping into their own unique geniuses about how they're approaching problems or how they're approaching work, and really see them shine and see where they are leaning towards or not in terms of these different skills, collaboration, critical thinking, stress management, and create their own love of learning, and then see from them how you can support that. And there is, in my conversations with many educators, there tends to be some resistance around letting go of that power and that power dynamic in the classroom, and also really introducing, especially at the older grades, fun and games. And I wish you would try it. And I have lots of tips and tools for you. And it just bringing joy into the learning when you're presented with a game or the opportunity to play. It invites you into a mindset of, oh, I wonder what's going to happen. This is a game. This might be fun. And that creates that openness to learning, that curiosity, that willingness to try new things, to know that failing's okay because I can level up the next time. I can build my resistance and try again. And so that element of play, that element of co-design, that element of game, I've seen it really take the burden off the educator so that they can get in there and learn alongside the young people. And they have so much to teach us. And it's really amazing.
Yep, so well said, Susan. And any parents who recently helped a student apply to college, or maybe you yourself applied to college or filled out the application? Some hands. We are asked to think about our experiences in new ways, right? If you ever have helped a young person, what's your statement piece? What's your personal statement? I don't know, I'm an 18-year-old, I've done this club, I've done that class, but it's about reframing these experiences and saying, yeah, you play on the basketball team, that's great, but what did that teach you? Did that help you foster leadership skills, teamwork? Were there challenges you had to overcome, be resilient, work on your grit, things of that nature? So my challenge to educators is to apply that same thinking, to reframe everyday life activities in the classroom environment. Such a classic example is social media. Generally speaking, Gen Z, we are good at social media. We have a personal brand. We work on networking through LinkedIn, through these platforms online, even the Twitter DMs these days. That is the same skill set that will help us get a job. That is the same skill set that will help us get into the college or program of our choice. But we don't go there naturally. It takes a bit of that connective tissue, which is the role of an educator. And I love how you phrased it, that this is part of the equity conversation as well. We can't rely on a manager or a teacher to do that holistically. Now, to get to a level of change where there's some institutional aspect driving the rising tide, I think that's going to take significant change and not just 1% improvements, but more like 10x changes, and we're not going to get there overnight. But it starts with teachers, educators, managers, parents, mentors, being that connective tissue to ask the question about what does that life experience mean for you? What skill did you practice? Did you develop? Did you hone? And how can this maybe apply to other aspects and influences in life? My favorite piece, and I think the team with Tim and Steph and everybody, they use this quote, you're not critically thinking between 12 and 12:30 p.m., right? You're critically thinking every single day. But we don't go there on ourselves as young people. We have to be told, that's an influence, that's an aspect of critical thinking, that's you being a leader. And once that clicks, oh wow, I am a leader. I can talk about that skill and use it on my resume, on my college app, in my job profile, whatever it might be. And that's the role that we need to play as leaders here.
Thank you for stealing our quote and spreading the good word. We love that. No, no, it's really wonderful. I think there's a point and a through line to what Dylan is talking about, though, that some kids are today already getting access to those sorts of navigational supports, to these sorts of opportunities and activities. But really at the heart of our work, I would say at the heart of all of our work here, is to help scale those types of opportunities to more students, to ensure every student has access to that. And while we can go a long way in fixing the language problem, we can go a long way in supporting good practice and practice change, but there is also an element, because it's education, a very strong element of policy. And Zarek and Courtney, I'd love to come to you, back to you on this a little bit. How should we be thinking about kind of the stick portion, the policy portions of scaling this sort of skilling and this skilling approach to more students in states across the country?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a really important piece, just given how our education system works. And so a couple thoughts on that. Currently, we are going to be driven by where our funding comes from, right? And how we get that funding. And as long as funding is tied to seat time and to results on math, ELA, and maybe science standardized tests, that's going to be what everyone is going to focus on, and it has to be. So there's nothing wrong with that. But it is a policy matter to support a shift in that. And so we see examples of states that are starting to do that work and to make those types of shifts on the ground available. And so things like putting into practice new types of graduation requirements, identifying a set of durable or employability or whatever term you want to use, skills that students are meant to have. Some states are adopting portraits of a graduate, which are fantastic. The next piece of that, though, and I think where we really need to see states start pushing next, is then providing ways for educators on the ground who are so busy, we know that, overwhelmed with everything that's happening already, providing them with resources to actually make these changes. So that's something that can be done at that higher level to support the changes in policy, and then help educators on the ground provide them with easier ways to start shifting practice and bringing some of these other opportunities into the classroom.
Awesome. And I want to pick up on the last thread you shared there. There's always a lot to add to a teacher's plate, right? And the question always comes back to, where in the school day do I fit in, adding games to my classroom, or fit in adding soft skills and 21st century skills, or where do I add in, talking about data, right, and AI and more technical emerging technologies. I think this is a really hard time to be doing reform work. We're coming out of a lot of trauma out of the COVID crisis, right? There are teacher shortages that plague the system. It's hard to introduce new demands at the time that we're in. I think at the same time, we're seeing early adopters respond to the huge changes that changed mindsets over the past 2 years, right? So one example, COVID forced a huge infusion of technology into classrooms at quadruple the rate that we would have expected, right, with one-to-one laptop programs and broadband access. And that creates a really strong foundation for us to think about incorporating both digital tools for content delivery and then also instructional goals that train students about technology in the classroom. So I think we need to build and collectively advocate to leverage the changes that happened during COVID, right, and push the field forward. And then the other thing I would say is that I think there were some bright spots during the past couple of years that we need to be paying more attention to. So as an example, in the data science education world, we went from 1 state in 2019 that had a pilot program for data science to 15 as of last school year. That was 15 states in under 2 years during a crisis. And so the momentum that we're seeing for people who want to try new programs, who changed what was their realm of possibility, right? As we went through a really traumatic time, I think is something we had to build on. And if we all worked collectively, right, and we think about this as not a 1-year effort but a 10-year effort, we can try to create these opportunities and access for students everywhere at scale, and not just the early adopters.
Zarek, my takeaway from all of that is that we're in a really messy time, right? And I think we all feel it in a real way. Change is messy, and it's really hard to be sort of living and navigating in this messy space. But I believe that we are moving more towards a skills-based system. We're moving more to a competency-based system. And so it's going to take all of us together in this room to kind of get there. And we're going to have to be okay with the fact that there is some messiness in the experimentation of doing something different, sometimes out of necessity and sometimes out of opportunity. And so kind of being mindful of that the time, that leads me to my final question for all of the panelists to answer. But how far are we from that skills-based paradigm? Or in other words, how much longer is the mess gonna last? And what is one tangible step that we can take to move us toward that skills-based paradigm? And Linda, I'll start with you and we can come back down.
Sure. I feel like the person eating the first crab. I think everyone's asking this question. You are absolutely right, Stephanie. This is a messy time of change, right? We are not completely in the new world of skills, but I think we all want to get there. We don't know how exactly to get there clean and fast as we would like to. But there's a lot of momentum and a lot of desire. I feel like, I remember when LinkedIn started, people put resume online, and there was a lot of skepticism around, people would never do that. And they did, and now that's probably a better way to understand someone's background and past experiences compared to your internal directory or whatever HRMS you have, right? I feel the same way because when I talk to business leader or chief people officer about, people are putting skill data, highlighting what they can do on the platform, and they were like, do you trust it? How do you validate it? And I'm like, yeah. And I know some companies they find the data so useful, they would rather do the validation. So they download their employee skill data, and then they ask managers to validate. But I do believe, right, we will go to a time that we wouldn't need all these validation, because I can go into this a lot, like human behavior and stuff. But to come back to your question, I think there's a lot of desire together to really realize the untapped potential of our talent pool. Companies have to focus on skills instead of past experiences, the places you have been, titles you have. And we know early signals how this is impacting women in industries where they are underrepresented, how this is helping people without degrees if we can all focus on skills, and helping students. So yeah, we'll get there.
I think we can also start with the low-hanging fruit, right? And we can think about opportunities to incorporate and synthesize the amazing world of online digital learning opportunities that have been built by the EdTech community over the past 10 years. I mean, if I think about some of the emerging technology arenas that we were discussing earlier, I mean, AI, data science, computer science, et cetera, a lot of those areas already have credentials and online mechanisms for students to learn. And so how can we connect those opportunities with what happens in the formal classroom? right? Because I think what we were also talking is about this issue of student agency and student motivation, and that has to start somewhere. And I think that initial spark will happen in the formal classroom. So how can we go into our existing math curriculum, or how can we go into the existing high school social studies curriculum and find places to infuse credentials or to infuse a credit-bearing opportunity that's low lift for the student, helps them get a job after they graduate, and is also feasible for the K-12 classroom educator or the local school. So I think breaking this up by stakeholder, if you're a local school leader, reach out to your local industry partners or your local higher ed to see if you can get a credential for your math class. I think if you're an industry partner, do the reverse and you involve your community and reach out to your local schools and districts and your other education partners. And I think if you're a funder, an investor, think about how you can create solutions for sustainable change over time that takes advantage of the low-hanging fruit and then builds a ramp towards bigger ends.
So how far away we are, I'll pass on that one. We're moving, we're making progress, and let's just keep making progress. But the one thing that I think is so important that everyone can start doing in all sorts of ways is just calling out and naming those skills as students are using them. If we're talking about moving to a skills-based hiring economy, the best thing that we can do for our students is make sure that they know the terminology to talk about a few skills that they're really good at. And that's going to go a long way. So the more that we can name those skills, identify them in the moment, and help students build the language around them and the confidence to talk about them, that'll go a long way, and then we can build from there.
I think there's a huge opportunity for imagination and collaboration as we're thinking about the answer to this question, and moving us away from siloing work, school, and what else. How do we really center the whole person, the whole educator, the whole worker, the whole organization, and really thinking about the health and wellness, the social interactions? How do we leverage all of the pieces of our environment that come together to hold us as we learn and develop and engage with each other? It can't just be digital. It can't just be in school. How do we really imagine how that community is coming together to collaborate and coordinate the learning experience of the young person so that learning is happening anywhere and everywhere? We are far from that, but there's pockets of that happening. That's the future that I see, and the little tests that we're doing today are getting us there.
I'll reference a quick rebrand to answer your question, Stephanie. 6 months ago, we referred to our skills content as impossible to automate skills. Today, I say hard to automate skills, because who knows what's coming with the rate at which technology is evolving. A year ago, no one even knew what the heck GPT was. Not that we know what it stands for today, but we are at least aware of ChatGPT. And so my answer is that it's coming soon, because we need that 10x change. We need that significant revolution in a way to move toward all of these great skills-based hiring, forgetting about McKinsey or where you went to school as the sole important factor in your career outcomes. That's the change we all know and all believe in and want to see happen, but it's going to happen with all of us being leaders. And we have to find ways to incentivize early adopters, to make it worth your time, to play in the muck a bit and to risk and to take a chance and fail, because it is worth it. And that's what we're all up here to do. And it's great to see companies from LinkedIn to small startups embodying that change. And with a team like this, I have no doubt that we'll be getting there.
I don't doubt that either, right? I'll close us out actually with a quick rapid fire question for all of my panelists. Yes or no, are you hopeful about us making these changes?
100%.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
And yes here too. So 6 out of 6 yet. We are 100% hopeful about the future of the skills-based paradigm. And I think there's an opportunity, you've heard from all of our panelists here today, to engage regardless of your position in this system, whether you are a learner, whether you are an educator, whether you are the leader of a program, a technology, a new platform, a new learning advocacy, right? We all have a role role to play in getting us here, and together is the only way we are going to navigate this really, really messy change. So I hope you've gotten a little bit of tangible insight in our panel in how we prepare students for tomorrow's skills-based careers. And with that, will you help me thank our beautiful panelists? Yeah.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Of course.